So is it possible to create a browser-based game using the free version of Claude.Ai through their chat interface purely by prompting? And the answer is pretty much, as long as it's a small game. So in this video, I'm going to show you what I built and how I built it, and a little discussion about vibe coding and its pros and cons. There'll be links to the playable version of the game in the description. So first, let me show you the final version of the game. So this is it. It's a tank-based game. There's me with the tank. I'm the green tank, and I'm shooting all these other tanks, and they respawn. We've got a number of lives. There's fancy effects like end of level. There's power-ups. As a speed power-up. I'm a little bit faster anyway. And the level ends when all the tanks die. And let's see, you get an extra life if your score gets to a certain point. And it's quite playable, and it looks quite nice, I think. I died. But this is the kind of game that I like to play, and I've been meaning to write a game like this for ages, so I used AI as my basis for doing this. And this was done completely with prompts. I didn't write any code to create this, and I used the Claude.Ai free chat interface to do it. And I would build more features onto this if the chat interface let me. I've reached the point where there's too much code, the free plan doesn't let me create any more, and the code generation is starting to fail. But I've created a game up to a certain point completely using the free version with prompts. That's a win. So let's look at how I did it and the issues that I faced along the way. Now remember, this is the free version of Claude.Ai. So this is amazing that I'm able to do this for free. In order to use the free version, I'm doing it all through the chat. So I type in prompts. I think if we went to the paid plan and we're using the CLI, it might work better. I haven't tried that yet. I've got to the point now where I can't do any more, so I might have to upgrade to the pro plan in order to go further. And so that's a good upselling mechanism. But let's see. So I started with a single prompt. I didn't want to give big prompts to the AI and have it go away and do everything. I want to do it in small chunks, in the same way that if I was building this myself, I would build in small iterations and see the results, and then build on top of that. I would be putting each of those iterations into version control and then moving forward slowly and gradually so that I could roll back if I made a mistake or choose to go off in a different direction, and I've always got the code. I've seen people create games with a single prompt. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm trying to use it for iterative development. So the first thing was just an experiment. Can I even do the basics here? Can I create a JavaScript game where a 2D vector tank can move around a square arena, randomly generate enemy tanks? Then we can move the main vector tank by pressing the cursor keys, press space to shoot a bullet, and that'll be it. So I was expecting a very, very basic, unstyled, black and white vector game to come out of this. What I got was something much more professional than I expected. There's trails, which I didn't expect. The enemy is shooting, and it's all working. There's no sound. The enemies are spawning in. So, I mean, that's a result. It's just, one thing that's interesting here is it's a little bit more professional almost than I was expecting. I didn't ask for score counts. I didn't ask for enemy counts. I didn't ask for instructions at the bottom. The reason it's scrolling is because I've zoomed in. So the AI does more than you ask for. The AI tries to create completed versions. I think it's probably because the AI has been trained on final versions of games. So everything looks very professional. This is not what I would do as a programmer. If this was my first iteration in the game, I would be having a very, very simple black and white thing on a screen. There'd be no colors, there'd be no score counts. So you get a little bit more than you expect when you're doing the AI. So having typed in the prompt, the AI goes away and thinks for a little while, then gives you the artifact. With the artifact, what you can do is you can download the whole game as HTML. In the UI, you can also switch to all the different versions of the game that's been created in your actual conversation. I've had to create 5 or 6 different conversations as I'm building this because the conversations have a maximum length of messages that you can put in them. And I found that as the game grew in size, it was starting to max out the message and it couldn't actually generate the game anymore. But in the initial stages, it was working well. So having typed in a prompt, it goes away, thinks. It generates the code, you can see the end result over on the other side, and it tells you what it's done. Now, one of the interesting things with vibe coding is you end up not really reading this because you're thinking about moving on to the next thing. You've got an output, you try the output, you go, that's fine, let me go through. You never end up looking at the code. That's the whole point of vibe coding. We're working from the prompts and the output. That's both good and bad. That's great if you don't know how to code. If you were trying to make your first game, you don't know how to do JavaScript, this is perfect. You can do this, you get a result. It can be very, very simple. A couple of prompts, you've got something playable. That's an accomplishment. That's a feeling of success. And you've got something that you can look at the code and learn from. You could even use the AI to teach you a bit more about the code. So this is all pretty good so far in its basic form. So then I go on to the next prompt. I want the game to start with 4 tanks. And the enemy tanks should generate with different colors. And they should shoot at each other, as well as the player, which they did. Now the enemies are all dead. So it's a very simple game, but they respawn. I don't know why that one died. I think I remember why. At this point, the enemy tanks are shooting themselves. So that's not necessarily a good thing. So having noticed that the tanks shoot themselves, I've asked it to not shoot itself, and we don't want the trails. So now we've got a whole bunch of tanks running around shooting at things. That's the start of a game now. Within 3 prompts, we've got the basics of a start of a game. And with each prompt, it's generated the artifact, and I can see exactly what it's done in the information. All these chats, by the way, are public. I'll put a link in the description to a repository where you can see all my notes and all the chats. So then I'm making gradual changes to the game. Here I'm adjusting the range of the bullets and adding the little explosions in there to make it a little bit nicer to look at. So I'm basically just incrementally building up the game, which is what I would do if I was coding this. And you can see the version count is going up. I'm only on about the 4th or 5th prompt, but the code has generated 16 different versions in this conversation. Eventually we're going to run out of space in this conversation. So now I want to create an intro screen. All good games have intro screens that explain the title. You press space, then you start the game. Brilliant. Unfortunately, at this point, it broke. It hadn't structured the code well enough to put in an intro screen and the game screen, and it broke. I downloaded the AI generated code at this point because I wasn't sure if this was fixable. I was able to change a couple of lines of code and it started working, so I thought the AI would be able to do that as well. I went through a whole bunch of prompts to try and fix this. Basically told it, it's not there, fix it, and it's gone, oh yes, I understand what the issue was, and I fixed it. Well, clearly it didn't. So we tried again, and it says, oh yes, I fixed the issue. Clearly it hasn't. So we try again with another prompt. When the page loads, okay, I've added debug console logs, and it has. It's added debug console logs, and I can see that we're pressing the keys. So that's good. We've got some information, but still no working code. Now, it shouldn't really need to add debug console logs because they're for me. So I've told it what I'm seeing, reprompted it. I don't think that made a difference, but it basically said, okay, let me change this, and I fixed it. And it hasn't fixed it. So I tell it again, it hasn't fixed it. And then finally, it fixed it. So what it said is, let me completely rewrite this with a simpler, more reliable approach. So we went through a whole bunch of hoops there. And I don't know what the AI was doing for each of those fixes. I saw it generating lots of code. I think it wasn't structuring the code to allow it to easily add extra screens, and it was getting into a bit of a mess. So somewhere in the code, it's restructured this. Now I could go back and look at the code and do a diff on it to see what was happening. But the main point is it failed. We went through a loop of it saying, I fixed it. No, you haven't. I fixed it. No, you haven't. But eventually it did manage to fix it. With the vibe coding approach, if the AI tooling cannot fix it, you're stuck unless you know how to work with the code. So this is one of the issues. I can code in JavaScript, and I had a working version, so I could have fed that into a prompt and said, do the next thing and build going forwards. But if you're completely relying on the AI generating your code and it goes wrong, you're stuck. If you are using vibe coding, you should, in parallel, understand the code that is there, learn how to fix it and change it, because AI is going to go wrong. The tooling is going to fail you. You will, as a human, have to pick it up at some point and do some intervention. So after all the success with the start screen, I want a game over screen. And I had the same issue. The game over screen was not displayed to the user. Let me die. No game over screen. So I've added a start screen, didn't render. Added a game over screen, didn't render. Again, we've got the issue that we're creating fairly large structural changes in the code, and it's just not geared for that. Perhaps if I had told the system at the front, look, we're going to have a start screen and a game screen and an end screen, perhaps if I'd just done that first, it would have structured the code better. So we're learning when we're operating with the AI tooling how best to structure our prompts to get something out the back. And then I ran out of length in the conversation. So when the conversation reaches its max length, what we have to do is the last working version, download it as HTML, create a new chat, upload that file that we just downloaded into the prompt there, then tell it, fix the game over screen, and then start an entire new conversation and work through it. And that's what I did. So here we go. So I basically tell it, this code that I've just put in here was generated by Claude.Ai to create a tank game. I'm just giving it extra context, but all the context it needs is in the source code. So you could just upload the file and then say, make the game over screen show, and then it will start working on it. So here you can see that it started working through. The message was so big and I had to continue in the middle. This happens with the chat interface when it's doing quite a lot of work. There's a lot of information coming back in the message and it says, I've paused because Claude's still doing work. Are you sure you want it to continue? Just in case, because if you're on a paid plan, it's going to start eating up your credits. So it's giving you the option, you might want to stop now. And go, no, I want you to carry on. So it carried on there. It said, I fixed it. Now we have a game over screen. Sadly, the game over screen didn't work. So I'd go through another loop of prompts where it didn't work. Please fix it. I found the issue. I fixed it. And then it managed to get there. So adding the game over screen was a little bit easier than the first screen. So now we have a game over screen in here. Let me go to version 10 and try that. I will just die and we'll see the game over screen. There we go. Nice game over screen. So then we go through, let's add some more features. So we give it 3 lives. I decided to add gamepad support quite early. That was a little bit of a mistake. I should probably have left that until later. But it did work through, I had to tell it a couple of times because we added gamepad support. Great. Here's the gamepad. And no, it doesn't work. Every time we add a new feature, no, it doesn't work. So again, we tell it, oh, it doesn't work. Oh, look, now we've got an error. We've got the actual exceptions. So we explain all these things to the AI and get it to fix it, catch the security error. So it's called the security error. And the basic thing is the gamepad doesn't work when it's in Claude. In order to test the gamepad functionality, I had to download the game as HTML and run it directly in the browser. Then I was able to test it. So I couldn't do everything in the Claude interface. That's something to be aware of. So then I was just adding extra features. Make the respawn time shorter so that more tanks appear more quickly. Then I want to add the concept of levels, but I ran out of space in the conversation. So I had to download a couple of the HTML, start a new conversation and upload it. So this is interesting. I've gone back to the shared conversation where I did all the level design and the information isn't there. So for some reason, it hasn't recorded everything. All the old versions are just not there. So that's a lesson learned. If you're using the chat interface, make sure you're saving artifacts when they come through. All the artifacts I put on GitHub, I didn't track the full conversations. I tracked the prompts that I put in. I was not expecting to see that during the video. I was expecting the shared chats to have all the details of the shared chat. So this is obviously not a reliable mechanism for keeping a history of what we did. Didn't expect to see that. Lesson learned. So when it works really well. When it doesn't work, it's a pain. So after a whole bunch of iterations, we then get to the point now where I've got the code, I've got the saved code, I've created a new conversation, I'm asking it to do something else. Here's the next prompt, do this. But it's no longer generating HTML. Everything is being generated as text, and it's losing the code. So when I run this prompt, I can see it editing lots of code, but it's lost, it's gone. This is all I'm left with. This is the entirety of my game in the chat interface. Fortunately, I'm saving it as I go along to the file, which is good because clearly some of the earlier chats have lost the context. Massive lesson learned. Always save your work as you're going through. But now the chat interface doesn't work for me, at least on the free plan. So it was really good when it was working. It was such a fun way to build up the game prototype, and it was moving really quickly. There were nervous moments where it just broke and I wasn't sure it was going to fix itself. So you have to have the ability to code to handle that. It was annoying that the conversation and message length run out, but that's a limitation on the free plan, supposedly. If I upgrade to Pro, I won't experience that, supposedly. I haven't tried it. All right, so there are limits to the message size. There are limits to the conversation size. So we know we have to keep changing those, and we download the artifacts. We know we've learned that we must always download the HTML. We know that the AI tooling doesn't tell us the truth. That, perfect, I've successfully added. No, you haven't. There's no code. So I don't know how much I should trust the output from the system. Well, the only thing I can really trust is the code that's being generated. That's the ultimate artifact from this, and I need to save it and keep hold of it because the chat interface is losing it. There were some fixes that I was able to make as a human in a couple of lines of code that the AI took quite a long time to fix. So if you have the ability to fix it, you can shortcut the process, but I was trying to do vibing for the entire time. But it's a little bit nervous to me that it can't fix obvious defects without lots and lots of roundabout attempts. It's very good at generating, it's not very good at fixing, and it's certainly not very good at understanding what went wrong, created a targeted coding fix, and then moving forward. And it's certainly not very good at understanding what it's done. It doesn't check its work. Here's the game, 6 lines of code. I don't think so. But it was free. I had a process where when it generated it, I was downloading the code. So I've managed to generate something. I have the code. It is lost here, but I at least have the code. So I'm using it as a tool to get to a certain point, which is what you want. Now, I'm in 2 minds as to whether I go for the Pro plan or not to carry this forward. I'll probably have to get a better feel for how Claude works, because maybe all those issues with the chat go away in the Pro plan. I might be tempted to try other code generation tools using the same exercise because I have something to compare them with, and I can compare the experience on the free plan. Now, what's interesting is I've asked it to do a game without any JavaScript game framework. So it could be that if I asked it to create the game using a JavaScript framework, it might have to write less code. Therefore, the AI tooling might be able to manage the code base better because we're delegating off more to the framework, and we might get further. So perhaps that's one of the experiments to try in the future. This is not a team sport. This is a single person working with it. There's no way you could have a team going into the chat interface. You might be able to have a team working in the CLI. I'm not sure about that, but vibe coding feels very much like a non-team sport. So I think it's going to be much harder to incorporate into development teams. It's great for single developers. It's great for people who don't know how to code until it goes wrong. So there's not really a sweet spot in there yet. It was fun until it went wrong. But it's an experiment. It's free. I got a game. I might try the Pro plan. If I do, I'll create a video on that.